Okay, hello guys. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to be looking at a typical project. I want us to start to looking at some practical projects and sort of delve into the process of delivery from initiation all the way to post delivery, post deployment, and begin to understand the fundamental steps that actually that's required to deliver any project. We're going to be looking at different methodologies as the series goes on, but this is going to be fun. There's a lot of exciting things that I'm hopefully going to be sharing with you. If you don't know anything about me, by the way, my name is Anthony. I always say on my other platforms that I'm here to help you. I'm a chartered project professional, and my desire is simply to bring you more information and understanding of the project delivery landscape. Okay, so without wasting time, let's just go straight into it. Just share my screen. All right. Okay. Now, this is our project. Our project brief simply says here, AI-powered customer service platform. So as a project manager, the underlying assumption here is that as a project manager, I would say as an AI and data-driven project manager and business analyst, you've been tasked with the responsibility of taking a project of this nature from zero to actually building, deploying, and sort of monitoring, tracking performance, as it were. And the project in question here is an AI-powered customer service platform. So, a project overview, and I read, it says the project aims to develop an AI-powered virtual assistant to enhance customer service efficiency by automating repetitive tasks, reducing response time, and improving user experience. The platform will use natural language processing, NLP, and machine learning to handle common queries, escalate complex cases of human agents, and provide real-time analytics on customer interactions. The objectives are automate customer service inquiries to free up agents' time by 60%, reduce response time by 40% through AI-driven instant replies, increase customer satisfaction scores by 30% within 6 months, improve operational efficiency by integrating AI with existing CRM system. The CRM system that they're using here is Salesforce. Timeline or time frame is 9 months, and the budget is £50,000. Now, if I was given this project, by the way, my train of thought, let me just caveat here, but my train of thought and how I'd go about delivering projects, it's not necessarily going to be the same for everybody, but there are some best practices that we all kind of test to. And so those are going to be seen in my thinking and how I go about delivering the project. But I'll have my own nuances and how I see things and how I sort of group my steps and my processes. And then I also want to say something here that in this particular series that we're doing here, hopefully in the next series I'll be able to do it. But this one here, I'm really looking at the thinking and the sort of the preparatory work and sort of the practices and processes that is involved in delivering this kind of project. I am not going to be using the tools. I'll probably mention them as I'm talking, probably sort of say one or two things about it, but I'm not necessarily going to use them, in your face, as it were, and sort of show you. But hopefully, as we go along, we'll be able to start incorporating some tools in the subsequent series and subsequent videos that I will do. Okay, so where will I start? Well, the fundamental thing here is I would ask myself, do I understand what's being asked of me? What's the ask of this particular project, right? It aims to develop, right, an AI-powered virtual assistant. What does that look like, right? What does an AI-powered virtual assistant look like? I understand enhance customer efficiency by automating repetitive tasks. Okay, I do have some understanding there. Reduce response time. Okay, all right, right, and improve user experience. Okay. Now, this is the first thing that you have to do as a professional that has been given a task of this nature. You need clarity. You need to have understanding of what you've been asked to do. Okay. And so I would basically, try and ask myself fundamental questions about whether or not I understand what's being asked of me. Okay. Now, I've had some conversations with the clients. This is, by the way, this is not a, just a case study. This is a real project of a client, a manufacturing slash wholesaler, reseller, And they sort of sell perfumes. They resell perfumes, but they manufacture skincare products. And the lady said they have gotten, I think, about 6 to 10 sales rep, and they find themselves receiving repetitive, frequently asked questions in their inboxes, by phone calls, on WhatsApp, etc., different platforms that they use, and then of course their Salesforce system. And a lot of these questions are frequently asked questions. They're very repetitive in nature. So, and she noticed that her clients, sorry, her sales reps are sitting with one particular customer who's most likely not going to buy the very first time around, right? But they're taking too long. And so she keeps having to add more people to the team to be able to address sort of the humongous number of queries and questions that are coming. And so her question was, can you build me, or can AI solve my problem? Where you can automate the repetitive task and reduce the response times. Because sometimes they sit on one particular client and then, another potential query, right, that could have led to some sort of sales would have to wait because they're all busy, and that affects user experience and how the users sort of interact with the organization. So there is a connection between how, improving the response time, how tackling repetitive tasks, and then, the user experience of the user journey and the user experience of their organization, and the whole buying process. And so AI-powered virtual assistant, what does that look like? How's that going to solve this problem? Right? Now, I did a bit of work to try and sort of give you a typical view of what we're talking about. Most of you have probably seen this. You go on some type of website and you have some sort of chat box right at the sort of the bottom section, right-hand corner, and you start chatting and you ask some repetitive questions. You have maybe, what's the delivery timeline? How much does it cost for this? XYZ, right? And this chat box is supposed to be able to interpret the meanings behind your words, right? That's why we're using NLP, right? And then be able to sort of predict the right answers for you. Hence why machine learning comes into the equation. So the idea is any kind of question or any queries that you might have as a customer that is really based on FAQs, right? Frequently asked questions, the chatbot should be able to provide that for you instantly, in minutes, in seconds, right? And you should be able to deal with the chatbot should be able to deal with this in a way that you don't have to wait on a queue or in a queue for a very significantly long period because the other sales rep are dealing with other customers. And then also there's that element of, um, if there are complex issues or complex queries that you might have, the system should be able to naturally escalate it to the human agents, as it were, and they will deal with more complex, more important things, if you want to really sort of put it that way. Now, so this is what it looks like. As a project professional, I will be asking myself, do I understand what is being asked of me? Right. Hence why I went to get this. Right. I did a bit of research, and I'll probably go online and try and sort of understand whether or not what competitors are doing, just to get a feel for it. Now, I don't understand yet the technicalities behind the scene, as it were, but at least I can sort of understand, okay, this is what it's going to look like. This is what the end goal is like. Because I want to begin my journey, right, with the end in mind. I want to know what the end is going to look like, because that's going to determine the stages and the steps that I follow. Okay. I probably will ask myself if I understand NLP, right? And have a bit of understanding here. I'm not a technical expert here, but I understand that NLP is all about interpreting, understanding human language so that we can be able to have meaningful conversations with computers, right? They can interpret our words for what it means, and then they can provide us with the relevant answers. And machine learning is, again, training, computers with large sets of data so that they can be able to recognize patterns, and then the prediction exercise that they do will be spot on to some degree, right? Okay, so I understand this, right? And I know that if this, the goal is that if this is implemented, you know, in the on Salesforce, right, as a system, is integrated as a system onto Salesforce, it should be able to automate 60% of customer inquiries. Okay. It should be able to reduce response time by 40%. And then we should be able to see increase in customer satisfaction by 30%. And then generally that should affect the operational efficiency because now the other sales reps can attend to other important things. They probably will have to visit, potential resellers, and they can do other things, right? They can focus on other things rather than, just sitting down, just dealing with constant FAQs, frequently asked questions. So that would be my general first thing. Do I understand what the ask is? Very important. There's some other things that I want to know, the triple constraints right off the back. Do I know the scope? Mm, I think I do, but I don't really have a well-defined scope statement or scope document. Do I know the budget? Yes, it's here. It's clearly stated 50K, 50,000. Will it suffice? Will it do the job? I don't know, right? But I don't know. We'll probably find out later. 90,000. Oh, sorry, time frame is 9 months. Do I know the time? Yes, I do. I have 9 months to initiate, plan, build, deploy, and get it out there. So I have some good basics to start with. But before I start anything, before I start beginning the whole exercise of, building anything in terms of putting some pen, on paper and begin to draw up some plans and engage different relevant people, I still think I need to answer some fundamental questions. What are these questions? That's what we're going to look at. Questions I need to answer to initiate the project. So let's look at them in detail. Well, first question here has to do with the project objectives. And here I'm talking about the purpose of this project. Why are we trying to? I mentioned briefly that the client has a specific problem, right? And they're trying to solve the problem by bringing in this AI assistant, AI platform, right? AI customer assistant, AI customer service platform, right? What is the problem? I've mentioned the problem. The problem is that they find these sales reps sitting on, addressing repetitive, frequently asked questions that they don't really need to do. They can focus on other things if we can automate that exercise via AI. What does success look like? We already have the key goals and objectives and sort of what the priority is and what success is like for the organization. It's clearly stated here what the goal is, what they're trying to achieve by implementing or by building this particular solution. So we have an idea, right? Deliverables and outcomes. There's an understanding, but we still can drill down as to some details about what the real deliverables are once we are clear about the scope and once we're clear about sort of the requirements for this particular project. Now, who are the stakeholders? We don't have any information about this. So who are they, right? What are the stakeholders here? I'm talking about both the internal and the external stakeholders, direct, indirect stakeholders. Anybody that is affected to some degree by this project that will have some type of, import or will be necessary or will have some relevance to this project, we need to list them. We need to map the stakeholders in terms of their influence, availability, commitment. We need to understand who that is. Now, remember what I just said. These are questions that I'm beginning to ask. So I'm listing this down and I'm saying, who are the stakeholders? I don't have the answers. So I'm going to now subsequently go and get the answers. But I need to start asking myself if I have all of these things there. If I don't have it there, then that means that I need to be able to look into answering these questions, right? Who's the sponsor, right? Who's actually paying for this particular job, right? Who's paying for this project? Who's building? Whose money are we using to actually build this system, right? What are the responsibilities of my team members? Who is in my team? Who is the team? What does the team comprises of? Is it external, internal suppliers? Do I have in-house engineers I'm going to be working with, subject matter experts? Am I bringing some consultants? Who is the team? Who is it? Who's going to be on there? What's their responsibilities? Who's doing what? Who's going to help me with some type of research exercise, the business analysis part, the architecture and design part, the engineering part? If I need to clarify any conversations about cloud, cybersecurity, whatever, who is in my team? Decision makers. And this is very important. Maybe I need to put together some business cases and I need to get some, approvals in place. What is the process, and who's going to approve those process? Who's going to approve my documentations? Right. That's very important. Who's the decision makers, and how should stakeholders be managed? And I didn't put it here, but communicated to. Right? What's the communication timelines? When do they want to be communicated to? How do they want to receive the communication that comes from reporting exercise, as it were, from the work that we are doing? Remember, we're building an AI-powered virtual assistant. It's a technological work. It requires constant communication with relevant parties. And so you need to understand how you need to communicate. Now, the scope, right? Scope and requirement definition. We need to define what the key project requirements are. What are the functional, non-functional requirements, system requirements? We'll go into a lot of these details later. But do I know what these are? I understand at some level what we're trying to do. We're going to use NLP and machine learning, right? But do I really know what the architecture is going to look like? What does the user experience, user interface looks like, right? The UI, UX, do I know what that looks like? What data are we going to be testing our machine learning exercise on, right? What does it, what are the requirements? Do I know what that is? I don't know, not yet. What is in scope? What is out of scope? Is it an external platform? Does it take them outside of the website? Is it a bolt-on exercise? Is it being integrated into Salesforce? What exactly is the scope of this particular project? What is the boundary of what I can do and cannot do, right? Are there any constraints? Time, budget, resources, compliance? We're going to deal with data. Can we use copyrighted data? Are we allowed to use it, right? What kinds of compliance regulatory frameworks control my industry, right? This is all fundamental questions that you want to start asking yourself. Existing resources. Maybe there is an existing code. This might not be the first time they began to work on this particular project, right? So do we have existing frameworks, code, templates, lessons learned that we can draw upon and before we begin to sort of ask some questions or begin to invest money heavily into building this, right? So you want to be able to be clear about the scope. Remember, again, we don't have these answers yet. What we're saying here is these are questions you need to be asking yourself, writing down and asking, do I have answers? If you don't have answers, well, then that's going to spare you into the next phase. And we'll talk about the next phase in a second. The budget, £50,000. Is £50,000 enough? Is it going to do the job? Can you build what you're trying to build at 50K? Right? What resources do you require? Right? The resources, the external resources, financial, technical, human resources that you need. Can 50K do the job? I don't know. You don't know. Right? We need some technical expertise to cost this project for us to understand whether or not we are actually just, aiming at something that is nearly impossible to do. Right? Is this 50K in do we inside, is contingency factored in this particular 50K, or there's no contingency? Is this a fixed budget? Is there flexibility here? Can we add more? What exactly can we do with this 50K? And then what skills does the team possess? If there's any skill gaps that will require any sort of additional resources, what is the sort of the means of paying for these resources, right? If we are building this particular solution, AI solution here, via Python or whatever the coding requirements are, but our team doesn't have it, doesn't possess strong proficiency in Python coding exercises, then we probably need some external, engineers. Can we pay for them? Is this money going to be, is this money going to suffice for that? Right? So budget is critical for us to be able to, we need to answer some questions when it comes to budgeting. Then when it comes to timelines, right? The project timeline, we already know this is a 9 month program that we have, right? Is that flexible? How flexible is this timeline? Is there any sort of compliance regulatory requirements to be able to, that enforces that we have to achieve this by a specific timeline, right? What are the key milestones and deadlines within that 9 month period? That's probably going to affect our ability to draw down our monetary requirements to continue, right? What is it? What does that look like? What are the external dependencies? Are we working with external organizations in getting the data? Are we working? Do we need any APIs? How is that going to affect, and what's the timeline to actually get access into some of these systems and dependencies that are going to affect what we do? And like I said at the beginning, how flexible is the timeline? And then I've sort of listed other things which are very, very important here, and I'm probably going to highlight them in quick successions here. The first one is risk. Risk, I'm talking about the potential risk and challenges that you're going to face in developing this, right? A project of this nature, you want to understand what your risks are. And I'll mention risks later on in much more detail, but you want to have an understanding of the key risks, your mitigation plan, right? Has this project been done before? What are the lessons that were learned previously? And are there any compliance or legal considerations that you need to factor in your development? Then I mentioned communication. You're dealing with different stakeholders, right? And they want to have some type of communication about the project, right? They want to know what's going on. What is the preferred communication method, plan? What is it? How often are you expected to provide progress updates to the team? What tools and platforms would you be using for collaboration and for communication? And who needs to be informed about the project progress? This is all critical questions that you need to ask yourself, right? Success metrics and evaluation. And this is very, very important, right? What is and how would you measure success? What are the key performance indicators, the metrics that you're going to track to establish progress? And how will the feedback be collected, incorporated into the reporting process? You need to establish, your metrics, your KPIs. You need to have a structure in place. You need to understand when these are expected to be, communicated or reported to the team. And this is all important things that you need to establish from the beginning. Post-delivery consideration, right? After you are done, what exactly is going to happen, right? What exactly is going to happen, right? What happens after project completion? You need to know that. How is training and support going to happen? How do you maintain this system? How are you going to do handover? What kind of support do you need to have in place to be able to, get your team and the users, as it were, to be able to seamlessly use this system in an efficient way? So these are questions. If I was given this project to build an AI-powered virtual assistant or an AI-powered customer service platform, I will begin to list down all of these questions, all of these key areas, and say, hey, do I have? Now, there's so many other things you can factor in as key critical questions you need to ask yourself, and you can incorporate and add to this, right? This is not exhaustive by no means, but it's a good place for you to now start your sort of initial requirement stakeholder engagement exercise. That leads to this part, right? That leads to the next part, which is stakeholder conversations or engagement and desktop research, right? And this is a combined exercise. You're going to now do what we call requirement gathering. You're going to engage people. It's not really fundamentally a requirement gathering exercise. This is really to provide you with clarity. This exercise of engaging different stakeholders and beginning to look at the documents and doing some research and engaging project sponsors and subject matter experts, engaging the engineering team, the sales team, Salesforce team, the marketing team. Probably you will call Salesforce themselves, right? Right. The list is endless. The point is that this exercise is supposed to help you answer some or all of these questions. Because hear me out, and I'm going to write this down here. The number one most important thing you can do for yourself before you start any project is to have clarity. This is the most important thing you can do for yourself at the beginning of any project. Yes. You need clarity. You need to know what this thing is. What is this about? Who is doing what? How is this done? How is this going to be achieved? What's the strategy? When it needs to be done? Answer all the questions about this project. Because if you can see it in your mind's eye and you have clarity on what is expected, then you can begin to build a plan. Right? You can't build a plan if you are not clear on what this thing looks like. both at the high level strategic, this is what we're trying to do, and at the sort of low level detailed requirements of this. Now, I definitely understand that you probably wouldn't know what the NLP requirement and machine learning requirements are as a project management and business analyst professional. No, this is the work of engineers, but you need to engage them and have a conceptual idea, right? The technicalities of the code and some of these frameworks that they're going to be using is something that they can mention to you, but you don't really need to have that level of detail there. What I'm trying to say is having a very good holistic picture of what is being asked of you. And this is where you start so that you can have the foundational work done. Foundation is important in delivering any project. So clarity is very, very important. And this is how you go about it. Once you've done this conversational exercise and engagement exercise, you've done a bit of research, you've looked at, competitors, what they have, you've answered a few of your questions, you've gone back and forth until you know what's expected of you, you move to the next stage, which is to determine what methodology you are using. And this is important. Now that you know what is expected of you, how are you going to organize your work? How are you going to package what you are doing? How are you going to do it? How are you going to organize your work packages? Now, project methodology, this is not a time for me to explain to you the details of it, but fundamentally, we're talking about how you organize yourself and the processes you follow. Every single process, either waterfall, agile, or agile, and there are many others that I have not mentioned here, but we're going to stick with these three for now. They all have a series of steps and a series of processes that you follow. Now, we are going to use waterfall for this particular project. Other projects that we'll do, we will look at it from maybe we'll use an agile or a combination of waterfall and agile, which is agile, or we'll use other ones. We'll probably look into Prince2 at some point, or we'll look at some more specific ones like lean and other things. But here's the point. When it comes to waterfall, waterfall is basically asserting that you only go to stage 2 when you are done with stage 1. Now, the different names of the stages, as it were, can be different. You could probably call this initiation. You could call it analysis and requirements. You could call it whatever you want to call it, but that's besides the point. The point is that whatever you determine as the first stage will lead to the second stage. So the successful completion of the first stage will lead to the initiation or the commencement of the second stage, right? So for this project, this is an image I took off the internet, but if you see my process, which I'm going to mention in a second, you basically notice that I am talking specific. I've changed this a little bit, right? And entitled it initiation and then requirements in brackets. And what I'm saying is we're going to first gather what we require. We're going to initiate the project. We're going to start it, go and get information, gather what is expected of us in terms of requirements. Then we will build a design, and then we'll go to the development stage. Once the software or the system is built, we can go and test it, and then finally go to the deployment, maintenance, and then the post-development stage. So we're going to go through this process, right, and itemize everything that is expected of us step by step from start to finish. And hopefully that can give you the clarity that you need. Let me go back to what we're trying to do here. We are, as an AI and data-driven project manager, tasked with the responsibility of building an AI-powered virtual assistant. And this is typically what we're looking at here. There's these chat boxes that sit at the right corner of any application or Salesforce or a platform. It's embedded into any simple application, and it allows organizations to be able to automate repetitive tasks, reduce responses, and improve customer experience. All right, so let's start. Stage 1. What does it look like? Well, stage 1 is the requirement stage, right? And I put here project initiation. And this is where we're going to establish the vision. The vision is to develop an AI-powered customer service platform. Now, as I'm talking to you, every time I mention the word platform, I'm asking myself, what does that really mean? Do I know what this is going to be? Does that mean that This it's going to be embedded into Salesforce. It's going to be embedded on our websites. It's going to be embedded on our communication platforms. But then, what does that really mean? I'm not sure yet in my mind. Maybe you haven't picked up on that, but those are the kind of things I'm asking myself. What is it that I don't understand about this? But that's the vision, right? We need to go and do some research, right? Now that we're clear, if we have all these questions answered, we now need what the ingredients, as it were, for us to build this particular platform. And so we moved away from the ingredients we needed to have clarity of the project. We are now looking at the ingredients or the substance required to build it, right? So I'm going to combine these two things here, research and analysis, scope and feature definition, because they're really about the business analysis part, requirement gathering, requirement elicitation, solicitation, requirement analysis, and then, putting together the requirement documents, your PRD, your project or product requirement document. And this is what we're looking at, right? So we're going to now start conducting different stakeholder engagement exercises. We're going back to these same people. We're going to have some interviews, surveys, workshops. We're probably going to do some desktop research. We're going to use ChatGPT. And we are looking at gathering information about the functional, non-functional, and system requirements. Yeah. Functional requirements is what the system needs in order to perform its functions, to behave, to act as an AI-powered customer service platform. Non-functional, again, it's about how the system should behave in certain circumstances. We're talking about speed. We're talking about scalability, security. Those are the non-functional requirements. We needed to operate in a secure environment. You're going to have people that you're going to collect information from. You're going to probably have a database. Well, that data has to be confidentially kept. And so you probably need to look at things like encryption and the conversation around hashing. All those things are very important, right? What are the system requirements? And this means many things, right? System requirements are critical, right? So how is this going to be integrated within the entire system? What will be the bedrock backbone that will make this work? Conversations around the cloud might be necessary. Conversation around how the whole ecosystem is being set up. So think about it in terms of a house where you have the architectural, structural drawings or structural work. And that is the sort of the back end, the backbone that allows it to work. And the same thing, an AI-powered virtual assistant will require some system implications, databases, servers, how are we going to get information to flow from one end in a much more faster way? What are we going to use to ensure that this thing works from a sort of back-end perspective? All right, then we need to identify key use cases for automation in customer service. Yes, who's going to use it? How are they going to use it? And we have to draw up all these various use cases because they're going to be critical in helping us sort of adjust our building or adjust the build exercise that we'll do, the development exercise for building this particular platform, right? Then we have to define integration requirements, right? And I've put here Zoho Dynamics and Salesforce. We know it's Salesforce, right? But how are you going to integrate this particular platform with Salesforce? Is it possible? Are you doing anything via some APIs? How? What exactly are we talking about here? Does it work? Is it possible, right? If it is, how, right? So those are conversations you need to have at the beginning, because that is critical for you to know before you start building. You don't want to build a platform that eventually you don't have the capabilities to actually integrate into the system that you're using from as far as CRM is concerned. And that leads to the next phase, which is really the feasibility study and risk assessment, right? You want to begin to explore the potential risks, right? In terms of data, AI bias, integration challenges, and begin to identify the mitigation around them. You need to test to know whether or not this is possible, right? And you also want to look at the NLP and machine learning technologies that are available for the implementation of this particular solution, right? You want to know if there's competitive exercise out there in the line, in the market that helps you to evaluate that this is possible and this is feasible. This will work. And you want to identify the risks involved in doing this stuff. because your context will be different from another organization. And you have the mitigation plans in place to be able to address them. So we need to carry out some feasibility studies, some risk assessments that is critical in helping us to be able to identify whether or not this is a viable solution that we're trying to build. And this is important. Before you invest money, right? First, you need clarity on what is required to get things done. Then you need to test to know whether or not those things that you are assuming will work. Then budget. We've already had conversations about this, but we said it at the beginning. You need to have clarity on your budget. Is 50,000 going to do cutting? It looks like a very, very, typical projects of this nature are probably, I'm looking around 250 to 500,000. If you say 50,000, well, maybe the scope might be something else. Maybe there is already some type of code exercise that has gone in and you're just basically tweaking things, right? So the scope is going to determine whether or not your budget will suffice. But that's besides the point. The most important thing is you need to make sure that your budget is fit for purpose, right? And what does your budget entail? Is it development cost? Is it technology cost, human resource cost, and any miscellaneous costs like security, performance, all the different kinds of costs that are critical to building this? Now, this exercise typically is a combination of different people, but business analysts, subject matter experts, consultants, enterprise architectures, very technical people, product owners, product managers to some degree, depends on the organization. And it involves, and a project manager, but it involves a series of documentations. A business case here, I put it here because we probably needed a business case before we started this whole exercise. Right? We needed to build some type of justification to initiate and start the project. And a business case will do that. It's only after getting the approval that you actually invest money and time and resources in beginning to do all this exercise that you've done. So a business case would have been drawn up by yourself, a project manager, or by your project sponsor, and gotten the approval first before giving you the project charter. And then the project brief is what will start this whole exercise. So you've drawn up your project brief, and your project brief is basically a very, very one-pager, two-pager document that is supposed to help you and help everybody, the stakeholders, understand the premise and the context of this particular project. Now, you will now start based off this particular exercise as a project manager / business analyst, right? A PID work, right? Project initiation documents. And that's really a very detailed, call it your Bible as it were, for the exercise that you're doing. You're not probably going to have everything drafted out. It's your business plan, right? It contains how you intend to develop this project. Now, this work that we're doing here of researching, analysis, and scope definition goes into what we call a project or product requirement document. Let me just write this here. PID is your project initiation document. All right, so at this particular stage, we're beginning to see some drafts. I'm assuming that this has already been done, right? These two have already been done, hence why we started in the first place, right? But this exercise is beginning to help you, start the exercise of, drafting your PID. You probably started your PID as a project manager, but this is where the rubber meets the road, right? If that's just the right sentence, by the way. But yeah, this is what you're trying to build. You're trying to get your PRD, your project or product requirement document, completed. Once you have your project requirement document or your product requirement document drafted, you should be in a position to begin the next phase, which is design. Right, now we understand the requirements. We probably have user stories, our acceptance criteria. We have an understanding of the epics. You have all the functional, non-functional requirements. You understand the system requirements. And so you're going to put it in some type of design. You want to start sketching things. You want to build some architecture and system designs. You want to start looking at your wireframes. You want to start looking at your diagrams, because that is going to further enforce the understanding of this project. And then more importantly, you're going to hand it over to people. So it's important that we know or they understand what you're giving to them. And by architecture and system design here, I'm talking about AI model architecture, right? What's the NLP engine? the chat box frameworks that you're going to be using, the backend integration exercise. What does that look like from an architecture and system perspective, right? Define data pipelines. What are these data pipelines for training the models and real-time customer interactions, right? We need to look at that. Remember, this is an AI-powered virtual assistant or customer service platform. What about the security and compliance measures? Where are we with GDPR, with data protection, information security? What's the concept? What's the conversation around the database encryption? What is it, right? What about the data? This is a data conversation. We need to have conversations around security. We need to have a conversation around compliance, and we need to know what that looks like from an architectural and system design perspective. So, the subject matter experts, the engineers, all these technical architects and whatnot should sit down and begin to sketch what that looks like, from a high level and low level perspective, based on what the PRD is and based on some of the assumptions that you've made here at your analysis and design phase. But that's not the end of it. We need to look at wireframes, right? What colors are we going to use? How is it going to be aesthetically put together? What's the user interface going to look like? User experience. How do we want the customer to engage this thing from a sort of an initial visual perspective and then the experience perspective, right? What fonts are we using? What colors? All these things are very critical. So you draw a wireframe to actually depict the picture of what you're trying to do. And then there are graphs here, diagrams, the plethora of it, maybe a data flow diagrams, swim lane diagrams, process mappings, whatever. It depends on what it is and what's relevant to your work, right? And then if necessary, this is really specific to what you're trying to build. You probably, if you have the budget for it, you look at some prototypes, as it were. You might not probably do prototypes for here, but it depends on the organization and the scale of what you're trying to do. Now, let's go back. We've done our analysis. We know our requirements, right? We've put together our documentation. We now have the design exercise done. Great. Now, let me say this. The project manager at this particular stage should have built their PID or some type of plan that they are following, more like the initial roadmap that they are following in delivering these aspects, right? There's an overarching project plan that should have been in place by this time before they started, right? So let me write some things. So for example, you say, first thing is the business case. Okay. And you say, okay, this is going to take 1 week. So completion might be XY dates. You put a date there, maybe by the 17th. Today's the 17th, 03. All right, completion time. Let's just do something so that we can have some clarity here. Completion. And then you say analysis is maybe 4 weeks. And then you say completion is 4 weeks from now, right? You get the gist. Okay. Then you say design is maybe 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks. All right. And then you probably say our review of plans, right? Review of plans. That's going to take you 1 week. All right, or 2 days. Let's just put 2 days. Now, what is this? This is what is necessary. In fact, let me add one thing. Stop. Let me add PID, project brief, and PID. And I'll probably give it 1 week. Okay. All right. And it goes on like this. Now let me say this. This exercise is required for you to start this. Very important for you to understand what I'm doing here. For you to start this, yeah, you have some type of high level project plan timeline, right? That helps you to know, all right, cool. I'm supposed to put together a business case, get approval, right? And then I'll put together my project brief, share it across, and then I also need to do my project initiation document, et cetera, et cetera. So this should be done, right? And you in your project initiation document, you have some type of timeline, project timeline. Let me write it that way. Project timeline. And your project timeline will itemize how long it's going to take to do these things. And but this timeline will be informed or revised because of the exercise that you're going to do at the analysis and design stage. Right? I hope you understand that. This timeline that you have here is supposed to guide you to get to this stage. Once you get to this stage, you need to review your plans. You can't continue to use that because now you know what is required and what is needed and how long it's going to take because you've done your due diligence of analysis, you've designed everything, and so you've had conversations with all the relevant parties to really know what is required of you. Then you review your plans again and you now build your roadmap, right? You now build your roadmap. So let's go back there and look at it. It will all begin to make sense in a second. Yeah, planning. You now build it. We've done initial planning before we started. Now we're doing another set of planning. And here you're going to break down your tasks. This is what is required to actually get into the development or the programming exercise. So your work breakdown structure, your WBS dictionary as well, right? Your work breakdown structure here is just basically taking all the various components and breaking it down into smaller sections and grouping it into different subcategories and whatever, and then detailing a proper roadmap, a roadmap that clearly shows you. I think I had an example of a roadmap here somewhere. Let's just see. Yeah, there you go. And I'm getting this off the internet, so copyrights. I don't want any copyright issues. Let me just say, whoever designed it is for you. This is the roadmap. Right, this is a typical roadmap, and you can use different applications. You probably can use Jira to put something like this together. You can use AHA. You can use Product Board. There's so many. You can even use Excel to do this type of stuff, right? The point is, now that you have clarity on what is expected of you, you need to put together a proper detailed roadmap with milestones, and then clear dependencies are sort of itemized. And then you now look at your allocation of resources. Who's going to do what? Right? This is where your resourcing exercise becomes very important. You're looking at capacity conversations. You're looking at skill. You've already had conversation about skill requirements, but you're now going to be allocating your resources against the different sort of key priorities and key things that are necessary. Right? I have not mentioned it here, but in your roadmap, you will also have your iterations. Sorry, your um what's this called? Release plans, right? Release plans, right? What is being released at what intervals? Are we waiting for the end to test? This is a waterfall project, so I assume so, but you still want to sort of see some type of development exercise going on at different stages. And then you define your KPIs, right? And this is very important. You're going to redefine your KPIs. Your original KPIs was to get you started and understand the bigger picture, but now you need KPIs for the development of your work. In your planning, you're going to look at integration questions. Now you have clarity on the requirements and the systems and the designs and the architecture. So you need to revisit your integration plans, how you're going to integrate it. When are you going to integrate? What conversations? What is it dependent on? All those things. And then your model training and testing plan, because you need to train your models and you need to test them. And that's a conversation that you need to have. Phase 3. This is where we now go into the development and testing phase. Let's go back to the beginning so that we have clarity on where we are. We started by saying, look, we have chosen the waterfall methodology. In fact, before that, let's go back to the top. We were given this project. We tried to understand some general questions here, and then we had some more detailed questions. We did a stakeholder engagement exercise to get some initial understanding of the project. We're not digging into real details here, but we just wanted to have a high level concept because we needed to have clarity. Clarity before we start. Once we had clarity, we determined the methodology that we're going to choose, and we chose waterfall. It meant that we will only go to the next subsequent stages once the first stage is complete. Okay, and I talked a little bit about the fact that at this stage, once you are clear about what it is that you're going to use in terms of methodology, you need to build some type of plan. And the few documentations that you need to get out there, your business case, your project briefs, your project initiation documents, and some type of initial roadmap that will get you started. And then you start here, right? You start with your first things are the analysis and scope definition, feature definition. You need to have that clarity of what the requirements are before you can move on to anything. Okay, then you put together your design. By the way, this is not an exercise that's being done by yourself. Let me reemphasize that this is an exercise that's being done by you and a plethora of other experts around you. The organization is going to tell you who's working on what and who can do what. And so once that is done, I said, come back and revisit your plans and now build a plan for development. You have a plan for the entire project. You need a plan for development. And we've talked a little bit about it. So you plan your development and you begin the development. This is where you are going to manage the development phase. And it might mean different kinds of meetings. It might mean different progress reporting exercise. It might mean quenching fire here, making these phone calls, chasing this person up, management control. This is where managing and controlling come in. This is where overseeing comes in as a project manager / business analyst. But the work is being done by other people. And they are going to focus on working through a number of things. The first being the AI development and training, right? They'll be developing the NLP-based conversational flows, right? They'll train the models, machine learning models with supervised learning for continuous improvement, implementing self-learning mechanisms using feedback loops. Now, you don't need to know this in detail, right? This is stuff for the technical people, but you need to have an understanding of what they're doing generally, some type of high-level concept of it, so that you know at what stage they're in, and they need to feedback to you what it is that they're doing. You don't want to leave things to too long or leave things, to the very end and then see some challenges and issues that you can't rectify at the end. System integration and API development, right? We talked about this, connect the AI assistants to CRM, ticketing and knowledge-based systems, implement multi-channel support, chat, email, voice, right? And then begin to test. We're talking about unit tests, regression tests, performance tests, UAT, user acceptance testing. Once this is done, and this is going to be a significant period, you don't know, you should know because you have a plan of it. But the point is that this is not a one-day job. This is something that they are doing over a period of time. Even the testing phase is separate from the development. Remember, we're using waterfall, so we only will test at the end, right? It's not the best decision, but we are just using it for our conversations here. All right. So the testing exercise will happen. Once we are okay with the testing, we can now begin to have meaningful conversations about phase 4, which is deployment. Now, let me say this here. This is where your success as a project manager really comes in, or project manager as business analyst, because look, it's beautiful that you've planned everything, you've had clarity at the beginning, you've done everything. But at this stage, if one dependency is not available, you can't move to the next stage. You can't move to the next stage. So you have to be on top of things. You've done a lot of work at the beginning. This is where, the actual day of the wedding, and you need to be there to make sure that this person is there and this person is there. Somebody's going to call you that they are not available today. Their auntie passed away. Their cat is missing. Something is going to happen and you need to be prepared. So this is where problem solving, proactivity, stakeholder, constant communication with people, leadership, this is where it's important. This is where it's important. And then you go into deployment once you are done with what you are building. And deployment is in different stages, but the fundamental stages are really two. First is pilot launch, where you get a team of people and you sort of deploy it for them and to a smaller group, and they will basically test it. And it's almost like a further test, as it were. And you monitor it and make some changes based on the responses and the feedback that you're getting. Once you're okay, still going to be in your plans, you will now go to full-scale deployment. And you roll it out expecting that they're going to be challenging, right? So you roll out all across all customer service channels, right? You roll it out across all customer service channels. You train the team on how to use and provide support, and then you provide documentations and resources for the team. This part is so important. You get the relevant parties to come in and train. The training can be in different stages. I have been in sessions where we've done 2 or 3 multiple trainings, and then we've provided online resources and also sort of provided resources across the company. And you find out that the people will come in, get the training, but they'll forget about it, and then they will come back to you. So you need to have opportunity, right? Accommodate some time slots within your diary to be able to pick up some of the, oh, I checked this, but it's not working. Oh, this is going to happen. Right. So it's training and support, to be perfectly honest with you. You need to understand the support part is so important for the actual, use of the system. And when you want them to use it, they're probably not going to use it. They're just going to be, faffing about 2 days before, the deadline to produce some type of report or whatever. They'll come to you and say, I need help to do this because when I did it, it didn't work the way I wanted it to work. Then the final stage here is the evaluation and scaling exercise. And this is where we are monitoring performance and we're looking at improving our exercise. So you want to be able to track your KPIs. We talked about establishing KPIs. Once you're clear about your requirements and your design and whatnot, you establish your KPIs and you begin to track them. You have some monitoring exercise going on. You're evaluating your KPIs and your metrics. And your metrics are and your KPIs are a collective exercise of what's important to you as an organization, right? You could be tracking anything. It doesn't matter. The point is that it's relevant to you and the organization. And that's what the higher up authorities want to see. And then improvements. Lessons learned and conversation is important. You want to improve on what you're doing. So you need feedback, constant feedback, because it helps to improve. And then expanding capabilities of the AI. This is how you're doing research and finding out about things in the organization. Sorry, the things about the AI and how you can be able to sort of, improve it in the organization. You understand the culture, you understand some of the challenges they're facing, and you constantly keep improving it until it gets better. So there's some work that you need to do at the end. Now, let me say this. We followed a sequential process. In other words, stage 1 must be done before we go to stage 2. If we're using Agile, we probably have to look at minimum viable products and eventually be able to sort of, build it incrementally. And so we can go at it from different angles. But the most important thing here is that you have to realize there's a process to developing these things, right? No matter whether you're following Agile or whatever, there's still a process. You have a process that you're following. And the key thing is to have that proactive thinking. You might, if you're focusing on one area, you might lose sight on some things. That's the nature of the beast. That's what you're doing. The most important thing is that you are proactive, you're responsible, you take accountability, and then most of all, you involve other people in the project. I've seen people struggle to deliver projects because they're doing it by themselves. You want constant communications with the relevant people, and you don't know it all. You are the leader doesn't mean that you are basically the go-to person to solve every question. You have to be humble enough to understand that if you don't know it, you can bring in the relevant people to assist you. If you do know it, well, you can offer the solutions. So be proactive, exercise leadership, and most of all, accept that things will definitely go wrong at some point, and it is your responsibility to stir it back up and just keep going correctly. Now, this is the first of many. We're going to be looking at this. I'm hoping that I can begin to now use some tools practically so that I can show you some of these things yeah, assist you as much as possible. But yeah, I would like to hear your comments in the comment section. Anything you want me to talk about. I'm going to be looking at implementation projects. I'm looking at different kinds of projects, different industries, different sectors, and I want us to sort of begin to do this on a more pragmatic, practical way. I hope it helped you. Thank you very much, guys. And looking forward to hearing from you. All the best. Bye-bye.